I'm Andrea, and this is Lorilet Monegro, and we are Soul Coach. And for today, we're going to do a little reality check-in. So, what does that? What,
Everyone, I have no idea, as always, what she has in store. Please.
well, we were just talking, just girls before the show. We're talking about some of the things that we're working on because we both have businesses, so we were talking about some things we'll be doing on our business and just how crazy the market has become where social media is really not social anymore. It's become all about marketing and all about, people just putting all of their news out on social media. I walked my dog. I woke up this morning. I had
Yeah.
coffee. So this is what social media has really become. And um, I think it's overstated and lately a little overrated because it's not what it used to be like. So this is my feelings, and the reality check-in for me is that there are certain things that I just would not put on social media, right? If I had three failed relationships, I would not be a relationship coach, right? So you do you kind of
She
have
mentioned.
to have knowledge in what you're teaching out here. You kind of have to, if you're selling products, you really should know about the products. um
Hopefully.
yeah, because I see some people sitting down. Someone was trying to get me to sell some health products, right? And she was telling me this was a great idea and blah 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 blah, and I said, can you send me some more information? She goes, oh, I'll send you a video. So she's telling me it's such a great product, but through the whole entire like thing, like she sent me a video, she was looking down reading from the script. So if it's that great, how come you can't speak about it without reading the script?
Ah.
Because if I'm using a product, I have to like the product, otherwise I don't continue using it, right? So that means I should have some knowledge about what I'm selling, right? um there are people, collagen's really big, so there are people just selling this collagen, right? And then you see a lady putting a little piece of plastic on her face and rubbing it in as collagen. So you have all these extreme,
Oh,
I'm serious. So you
oh, I
have
didn't know that.
all these extreme views on social media, and it's like everybody just wants like their 5 minutes of fame, and they're just going online like crazy people sometimes and just putting everything and anything out there. So my reality check is to be careful about some of the things that you're putting out there, or some of the things that you're listening to out there in that
Mm.
space, because some things may sound good, but that doesn't make it so. So just be mindful, check back in with your body, say if this sounds too good to be true, it possibly is. If you feel like someone's trying to sell you a bridge, then don't buy it, because it's probably not a good idea. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I feel like, a trend that is happening is that everybody is like selling and selling. And I don't know that people are really are interested in offering great value or even the opportunity for people to think through what they want and who are they and all of that. I find that, while it can be a great opportunity, especially if you are genuine in whatever offerings you're making, then it's great to be able to do that, but not when you are kind of like surrounded by a whole bunch of interesting commercialized and just it's almost like they just want your money and then they don't care about you anymore. It's like, gimme, gimme, and that's the end of it and move on. And so you have to be kind of careful out there at this point in time because, sometimes you don't get like even a live person. They're just all these now robots, which this is where artificial intelligence has its pluses and its minus. Right now it's one of those situations where I feel people need to have connection, and I don't know that we can get that um, readily. You know, I feel like it's become a real special commodity to be able to have real live people when you purchase a product, and to have the real person there, and to have a person teach you weekly and it's them, and even if they have supplemental materials, I think that that's something that needs to be valued. While all of these artificial intelligence and all these things allow us to leverage other components of creation, I don't know. If I were purchasing stuff, I don't just want information. I want to be able to have the person there that I can have a conversation. I don't want an automated system that takes me through hoops and ladders before I get to an answer. I'd like to be able to connect to a real human. Um,
I
so I
agree.
feel like it's changing too much, too rapidly, but I don't know if people are going to value people, as much as they probably should. Like I would pay way more for a real live interaction component aspect of a product than just a product that's there. But I feel like right now people sell you a $2,000 product like nothing, like they're selling you themselves in person. And I don't know that that's fair. Like those kind of pricing I've seen in many things. I don't think that makes sense.
And you're just going through a course that they probably created in Chat GPT.
And
And
it doesn't matter, that
no,
doesn't bother me, that they would create it that way. But what would bother me is something with a very, I'm going to say a high ticket, and then you don't even get access to the person. Because what about if you're going through stuff and you don't know what, you're not understanding, or you're not quite mastering this. And that's where I feel like it's wrong, because ChatGPT or any other of these AI tools are here to advance us, and that's fine, right? That I'm not worried about them as tools. I'm more worried about what the human is doing outside of them as tools, because what they do is speed up what we would do normally, which is research a whole bunch of articles, read a whole bunch of materials, all of that, instead of us investing hours upon hours. Especially if you're an expert in a field, you'll know whether this thing is telling you some nonsense or telling you guidance that makes sense to the realm or the area of study. I'm really just concerned with these people selling these things and be like, well, you figure it out, girl or dude. No, it's bad out there. It's bad.
I agree. And I think that I don't think the problems with the Chat GPT. I think the methods that people are using to scale are at any cost. There
Right.
so people are very, everybody feels like this is the information age and this is the time to really have a business and make that money, and they don't care at what cost, right? So everybody's coming online, they want their little piece of the pie, and whether it be ethical or not, they don't really
Yeah.
care. They're more concerned with the end game, and it's their end game.
Yeah.
It's not the people that are buying it. So, but on a
Yes.
on a bright note, people don't last in business that do things like that, right? Because
Eventually.
you can only sell so many one-off products, right? So if you're selling a $2,000 or $3,000 program and you're not giving any value, and people can't get in touch with you, and they're not going to be able to get those results, so that bad news will travel very quick, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like a hit or miss, I feel, in that whole landscape because one of the things that people also put in there is when you do these self-paced programs is like, results are not typical and all that. And I get it. And so they put all the risk on that person making that purchase. But I find that oftentimes when you're able to connect with the person who made the product, or there's a live component teaching to a thing, what ends up happening is that when a person has these questions or these blocks, or want to kind of answer questions in a way that helps them get clear, or maybe they're not necessarily um, approaching something in a way that is
You need
logical,
that thing.
you get the guidance, you know?
You need that. So, um, I have a client that I've changed the program 4 times to fit her needs.
Right, and that's
Like,
what it is. Right.
and she's been with me a while, you know. So, um, and I'm with her till the end, right? So, um, she's more of a pro bono thing that I'm doing, but I'm more concerned with her outcome. I did not want finances to get in the way of her not being able to have her results. So one of my
Yeah.
clients is, but I've changed it several times because she had a different need at different
Right.
times, right?
But also you get to hear that, right? Because you're in
Yeah,
person, as opposed to like, oh, I'm checked out. I don't know what you did and what happened with your
but
life, you know?
but that's why I always say that there's no such thing as a program for anybody, right? So there's a program that I do that has worked on literally everybody. It's helped people reverse their autoimmune diseases, it repairs their gut health. If they're having hormonal issues, it fixes that, thyroid. It just repairs everything. But everybody's not in the same stage, right? So this is the program that this young lady is doing, right? But because she wasn't in the right place to start, like I couldn't give her certain things until she was ready. Does that make sense? So
Yes, of
so you
course.
so you have to tailor things, and I knew that the second part of this wasn't going to work until we got her mindset where she needed to be, right? So maybe we work on 1 and 2 concepts, and then we move to 3 and 4, and then we also have to tailor it to her genetic issues, like her family cultural
Yeah.
issues and stuff like that, like foods that she likes and stuff like that. So everything has to be freely movable. There's no standard in health, right? So you do have to be able to have these conversations with people, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
in order to really have, I think, those results, because people need that motivation, they need that momentum, they need to know that somebody's cheering them on, because a lot of times when people are going through anything, whether it's a health issue, whether it's a relationship issue, whether it's a wealth issue, whatever they're getting work on, they're going through things, and they may not necessarily see things or appreciate what's really happening, right? So you do need to be able to work on those different pieces that they may be weaker in at that moment. And most times it's that self-confidence and that self-esteem that needs the momentum. And they need that cheerleading because they are not their biggest cheerleaders, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So and you can't do that all through text and bots. I'm sorry, you can't. You do.
And, oh, yeah, all these different, I'm gonna say it's not just even the text. So sometimes the text could work if it's the real person, but not if it's a robot. That's what I'm saying. That if it's a real person is very different. Because I've done work with people, meaning that I've been a coachee in a program and things like that in my life where it's been through text and things like that. And that works too if you're able to get the real person. It's when you're getting these loop arounds and you can't ever kind of connect ideas and you know and the texting could be a way, right, that supports that, but even better is to have like even if it's an 1 week yes and 1 week no, like on and off, um to have programs that have that component. I feel like now in this day and age, because there's just way too much information out there. There's just way too much. And I think that that has its purpose. Um, but the overload, I think it's also another thing that impacts our ability to connect with people and do um the best that we can do in our jobs, as we're seeking to help. Because I don't suggest that any of these programs have ill intentions per se, but I think that there's a disconnection now in this day and age,
But there's a
you know?
disconnect, with everybody that's online, right? They have that need to be seen. Everybody wants that 15 minutes. So the
Yep.
disconnect is starting with the very person who's trying to teach someone else. So you can't help calm somebody else's nervous system if you're a space cadet and you can't and you can't monitor your own. But you really can't, you know? And we are setting ourselves up for cortisol hell out here because we
I'm
are.
sorry. This is
We
so hilarious. I have to be honest
but
with
it is because I mean everybody's under so much stress to perform, to perform, to perform.
you.
So you
Yes,
have to relax. When you look at
we
the
are.
human body, everything is about contraction and relaxation, contraction and relax, right? So
Yes.
it doesn't just contract, 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 right?
I think that would be horrible.
Yeah. So, but I mean, and we'd be walking around like one of those Bugs Bunny cartoons, right? But this is what I'm saying. You're meant to have action and relaxation. So when we're
Sure.
walking around in that cortisol hell that I was just talking about, we are always in contraction because we're always striving, 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 right?
Yeah.
Oh, this isn't working. I'll pivot over here. This isn't working. So, and it's crazy because we're setting ourselves up for failure because it doesn't
Yes.
matter. If you're meant to have a successful business, it's going to happen. If you put one foot in front of the other and you do the thing and you put the action in day after day, you just keep building what you want to do. At some point, it's going to hit. Maybe maybe you're 3 years in and you haven't hit your target yet. Maybe your wording's off. Maybe you're talking about weight loss, but what you really should be working on is mindset, right? You should be helping people with mindset because that's your strength, right? And you're missing your target here. So there's always a pivot area, and there's always that step back where you have to like step back and look at what you're doing and what's working, what's not working. But to be like this all the time, it's just it's not good. So, I for years have worked with people. I mean, my whole entire life, I've worked with the public. And I like nothing more when I come home than to close the door and shut them all out, right?
Of
So
course. We all need
imagine,
that moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
but imagine then coming home and turning it on and talking to more people, right? So when you really need to relax. So that's what
Right.
I'm saying. There's a good time and a bad time for everything. So um when I first started my business, I was very, very adamant about having very specific times where I would answer emails, very specific times where I would answer chats. And if you didn't catch me in that time, then you waited till the next day. Like I can see that people commented on my posts at 6 o'clock the night before or the evening before, right? And I'm saying good morning because that's how long it's been since I checked. And this that's not for them, that's for me because
Right.
you can go into chats online and just means to say hello to a friend and you never come out of there. It's like you're in chat hell, right? You go in to say, hey, what time are we meeting later? And then you see 7 messages that you missed, and you're like, oh, let me just check this. And you never get out of there. So
This is why I don't, make
yeah,
that the biggest part of my life, because unfortunately, I find that it all has become very trivial now, right? Like everything is just, like, no, let's have a meaningful context. If you really want to work, then you commit. There's no such thing that people's time is for free. If somebody's offering you something that costs thousands of dollars and they're willing to work with you, and you don't take advantage when things are on promotion, or you don't take advantage when they're offering these introductory things, and you don't take advantage of having a real live person help you, listen to you, understand where you're at, figure you out, figure some of the ways that you can be supported, then you know what, then that's how come you get suckered into these people that are great marketers, tell you that you're going to do everything in a day. You buy the thing and you're frustrated because now you paid a whole bunch of money to do a self-paced program where nobody comes to your help, but that's because you wanted to be naive about it instead of trusting those people that are telling you, "Come, let's do this." Right?
but
Like
in
it's crazy.
in all fairness, the marketing is geared towards people's pressure. So when people are
Yes,
teaching people, I mean, their
that's
pain
true.
points, not their pressure. So
Yeah,
when
things that
people are,
bother them.
yeah, so when people are teaching people how to coach out here, um, uh, there are a lot of coaches online that maybe took a 10-day coaching course, others that took a 6-week coaching course. And they're teaching things, about the body that they really, really just have no business teaching, right? Because they don't have that knowledge and they don't understand how the systems connect. And they're out there causing more harm than good, right? But people are telling them, oh, just follow what this person's doing, or go comments on this one's post, and do all these crazy things. And but they're teaching them to market to their pain, you know, and that's not the answer, right? So, but that's why people are raising their hands and getting
It's a big issue.
those
It's a big
kinds
issue.
of programs, because people are trained to market to
Yeah.
their pain. That doesn't make it
Yes.
right, but that is marketing. That's always been marketing. Look at Ginkgopa, that that medication that's been out forever, right? Um, Not Ginkgopa. What is it? The carcinogen. I can't even remember it. It's like it's a coffee bean extract, right? Um, and it was on the market for years. Someone said it was great for weight loss. All they did was remarket it for weight loss, and millions of people went out and bought that thing that does nothing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
They
mean,
bought a
it's just
coffee. They bought a coffee pill for a lot of money, and they kept buying them, and they were on them weekly, and they could have just went with Folgers, right? But
yeah.
people wanted that result. And if people
Yeah.
want a result bad enough, then they are willing sometimes to listen to some very bad advice, because they have been
Yeah.
trying it for a long time. They have tried other things, and they say, "Well, maybe this is what I really needed all along," because they do have that hope, and they do have the fortitude to want to get that outcome. But unfortunately, they keep connecting with the same type of people, the people that are not really heart centered, and are really just about their outcomes, and not whether or not they get other people's outcomes. There's a lot of really good people online.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a lot of
There's a
great
whole
people.
combination. I just think it's a matter of realizing the difference, right? That having a real human person that actually is like there tells you, oh, there is really a person behind all this. It
Well,
makes
I
a
don't
big difference.
well, I don't think Chat GPT can lie. So maybe when you think you're in bot hell, ask him, who is he? Is he Gemini, or is he Chat
Maybe.
GPT 4.0? I wonder if they would answer. I wonder if they were in a chat.
I don't
So
know.
so I was invited to a Zoom by someone who's been in the business for a really long time, and he creates a lot of new tools, and he was selling bots where you can set up a bot anywhere on any
I'm
platform,
sure.
and he was
It,
showing people how to do it, how let the bots do the sales for you. And
I mean, I'm sure there's a space for all of these things, and I think as artificial intelligence continues to improve, for sure, all of these things are going to be, I'm going to say, a support system. I am not against these things existing per se. What I'm saying is when you have that and then you have an actual combination of real human live, like whether that is a biweekly call or whatever your process would be, that you really have a product that merits paying, two, $3,000 or whatever, because you have an actual that expertise and knowledge base and experience, meaning a lived experience of a provider, of an educator, of whoever it is that's guiding that process, comes with insight that doesn't come from just searching the web. It comes from lived experiences, response to different issues that arise in the process of acquiring or learning whatever it is that has to be acquired or learned. Um, and there are insights and understanding that you can share and work through from experience that has nothing to do with information. We have information everywhere. I feel like information is so everywhere that at this point I feel overloaded personally, and I'm going to speak for myself. I feel like, okay, too much information, and I don't know that that helps me. It makes me go into a rabbit hole of information, like the black hole of information, you
yeah,
know?
but also you're talking about those insights. So if you're not having that communication, you're not really sharing those insights, because I don't know what someone's going through unless we're
Right.
having that conversation. And
Exactly.
they say, "What did you mean by that?"
Right.
Because there's been times that, I did a challenge and we had two calls. Um, the challenge is, I want to say it's not difficult to understand, but that's because it's what I do. So I have to understand it. But for
Right.
someone who's just getting into health, it might be. So
Right.
I have two calls every week of that challenge. And sometimes we'll be in week three and someone will ask me a question that I might have expected in week one, but that's how they're catching up in their mind. That's when that connection needed to happen
Yes.
for them.
Right.
So, but it wasn't because they weren't applying themselves and they weren't doing the work, because they were doing and doing and doing. But in week three, it was like that light bulb went off and they said, "Do you mean?" So
Hmm.
if I wasn't having those conversations with them, I might not have been able to say, "Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Good job." And because in that moment, that's when they really got it. And after that challenge, they went on to continue and get those results on their own, right? So
Yes.
I think those interactions pull something out, but even your client may say something, and you might think they're here. Let me give you an example. I was working with someone, and she should have been dropping weight. I mean, much quicker than she was. Now she was losing weight, but I was baffled, and that doesn't happen to me, right? It just doesn't happen to me, right? So, um, I said to her, "So let me ask you something." I said, "We've been going at this a long time, and you're doing everything right. So on that note, I don't understand why we're not, I may even made her get labs early on, because I was very
Right.
sure
You're
that
seeking to understand what's going on.
no, but I was very sure something was going on early on that we needed to correct to expedite what we were going to do, right? But so he said to her, I don't understand. You're doing everything right, but you're not losing any weight. So can I ask you?" And I said, you know, "What are you having the disconnect with? Is it my method of teaching? What are you looking for that I'm not giving you? Because For some reason, there's a disconnect here. So she said, "Oh no, I get everything you say. I love what you're helping with you." I said, "So can you tell me what the hardest part of this for you is?" And she said, "Oh, it's probably my drinking." I said, "What?" I said, "What do you mean you're drinking?" So she very nonchalantly said, "Well, I think that's the hardest, not being able to drink as much." I said, "So we're on a weight loss journey here. We're on the same page about that. Yes?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "So you're eating all those wonderful things you're telling me about all week long." I said, "How much drinking are you doing?"
Right, because
One,
this was like a sabotage to everything else.
one glass of wine on Friday at 7 a.m. She goes, "Oh no, I drink every night."
Oh, no, 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 no,
How
no.
many, how many glasses? So I said, "Okay." So I said, "Okay, we're gonna do a little
Uh,
redirect here."
we found the open valve.
So I said, "Okay," but I mean, I was baffled because she was doing everything right, and this doesn't happen unless it just doesn't happen.
Something else. Yes, yes.
And I was baffled, and then I said, "Okay, well," I said, "I can help you with this issue too." I said, "But
Right.
I,
But it's so interesting, right? Because the client probably thought that, oh, everything's going to be just fine. And
no,
maybe
I
that you
think
weren't even
I
going to
think she
notice, that maybe you weren't even going to notice that, wait, that something is off.
But I could
Um, you know,
see it in someone's face. Like I can see when someone's on that weight loss journey, you'll see it in their face before you see it anywhere else. And you'll also see it in the way they express themselves because that confidence does start to come back. Things do start to change, right?
of
Because
course,
that
because you
mind and
start
that body
changing.
works
Yeah.
together. So, um, but I said to her, I said, you realize we have to work on this issue first because this is not going to happen unless we take care of this, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
It's a
so she
big
said, "Okay," and
problem.
I said, "I'm willing to help you with that too, but we got to be honest going forward, because I said you're just wasting your time if but sometimes, and it wasn't because she didn't want the results, but she was in a place where she didn't feel good about herself, and that was her way of, sometimes people are stuck in a situation for so long that place of uncomfortability starts to become comfortable for them because they don't know any other way, right? So when they start getting some of that result, they actually get afraid, right?
Hmm.
What if
Hmm.
it isn't any better over here, you know? Right? So, um, but she did go on to get other things together in her life, and we still talk today, and she's still working her plan, but um so you do have to have those conversations because I was able to visually see something right away, right? I wouldn't have seen that in a text. So
Right.
if we weren't meeting one to one, and we were meeting weekly, I would have never noticed, right? Or I would have missed that important clue,
Of
right?
course.
But even in a group coaching, right? You can still see if the members are showing up regularly, what's happening because you do scan the room, and I mean,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
I think that in person is more valuable. I can't tell other people what's right for them, and
Right.
I don't intend to portray that I know what's
Oh,
best
no.
for Mary, Joe, and Bobby. But
No, no, not at
I
all.
know for myself that even like, as long as I've been a nurse, I will always prefer the bedside, and I've run facilities, but I prefer to be with that patient at the bedside because that's where my strength is. That's where they can
Right.
open up to me and tell me what they need and I can help.
And again, there's a place for everything. There might be clients who need like a hybrid combination where they get certain things that are on their self-pace and then they get that extra support. Like I said, it's to me, I think that's an important added value. And of course, that's where I feel high ticket prices are merited, right? Because you're having a person show up, you're having a person invest time, you're having a person invest their effort, money, and insight. You have a person that has to find connectivity no matter where they are in the world if this is what they're doing. And you have to account that creating any product takes money, time, and effort on the front end. And it takes a while before you break even with whatever you created plus whatever you've invested in terms of time, money, effort, and all of the process to create any digital product. So I get it and it has its place. I just find it odd that recently, I've been seeing people launching like 997, $2,000, 1999, like that. Those kind of things for purely self-paced stuff. You find that a lot now because everybody just wants like a quick
But that's what a lot
money
of
and
people are
run.
do. A lot of people are doing, but there's also a lot of people selling webinars where you get on the webinar, they're pre-recorded. There's no actual person there.
There's no actual person, right?
Correct. So they're
Hmm.
selling you a webinar like for $99 or $69, and it's
Yeah, but that's
pre-recorded.
a one-off. That's not, those are not investments to me that merit
But no, but they're
always having
asking
a,
you, but they are asking you at the end of those webinars to sign up for their bigger program. If this interests you,
right,
this is
if you want to, but I don't see that wrong, right? What
I'm
I
not
see
saying
wrong
it's
is
wrong.
whatever
I'm just
that,
telling you there are a lot of those things going on.
right. And I think that you have to have an entry point, when we speak of business, because I myself find that that's actually better because you get to try something at a low level investment, get to see if you really want that. I actually think that that's a good thing because, hey, better spend $99 than spend $2,000 or whatever, and then realize you don't really want to do that or you don't want to learn from that person. Because I'm of the proponent that sometimes you hear the same exact information coming out of two different people's mouths, and somehow one connected with you and the other one didn't. So I think it's important to give people like opportunity to be able to have that. I don't find that that's the bulk of what I've been seeing online. Been seeing people really going for those high ticket items. Like they want their money quick. They want their money quick. And it's hard, I think, to build trust when people have to fork out this level of investment, you know, which I think is what's eroding the trust overall
Well,
online,
I don't think that's what's eroding eroding the trust, because I think that if you have, like, I've been doing what I've been doing for 40 years, right? So I wouldn't underprice myself,
No,
right?
you
So
shouldn't.
no,
That's not
I
fair.
wouldn't. So if I want $10,000 to give somebody this result, then I'm with that person to the end, right?
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. High
And
ticket items should demand certain things.
but I'm also not taking 20 of those 10,000 people at the same time, right? Because
Yeah,
I'm not, right? So,
that's hard to do.
but you should know your worth, and you should own your worth 100%.
Absolutely.
But you should
Absolutely.
also, people that you are willing to spend that kind of money on you are people that know, like, and trust you because they have been in the world,
Absolutely.
right? So,
Absolutely.
a lot of people feel like there's people in their groups for a long time and, oh, they'll never buy. It just means that they might not be ready at that time. But if I didn't have the years of service, then I certainly wouldn't be charging $10,000. So there are a lot of people that are just starting out in this space, and they think that it's acceptable to charge five or $10,000, and they absolutely don't have the skill to be doing that, right? And um, that's on them, because it's
Yeah.
okay to get paid what you're worth, but you do need to provide the value and the outcome
Right.
for
That's what I'm
that work.
saying. for that cost, right? Like if you're charging a couple of $1,000s for things, then you should have guidance. You shouldn't be like, you go figure it out and
Yeah,
call
I
me
mean,
back later.
but on the other, but yeah, but even on the other side of that, people are charging $7 for, um, get your seven essential steps for financial freedom, right? And then
Right,
yeah,
but the cost of $7 in the skin of the game is not the cost of a $2,000 product. You
I
know what I mean?
know, but someone will buy, but it's still money lost for
No,
bullshit.
I agree,
Because
but I agree. No, this is happening day and right and
because
night. But I'm
people
saying,
will open that
but I'm
$7
saying,
products and and what they're offering is in 7 cents worth of value. So it doesn't matter if it's a low
well,
ticket
I
or
wouldn't
a high
know that.
ticket.
I've gotten
It's shit.
Right, but no, but I've gotten things that are like $7 and they're great things. So this is not, I think that we're speaking different things here in the sense of at least what I'm trying to suggest here is that a high ticket item for it to be worth a high ticket value has to deliver some kind of guidance and support that is tangible. Um, I'm not against automated anything if it's worth it and if it's great and if it's a product that merits that because again, it's even cost of production is there. You know, the idea that, for example, people have to give anybody free time, free coaching, free everything, that's not really true. Sometimes there are services that are not as tangible. It's not as tangible as, for example, lose 5 pounds, lose 10 pounds, because there may not be that type of service. And I get that. But still, there should be a way of somehow connecting with whoever is that person behind that product. In other words, my concern is that many people put out products, but they don't stand behind their product, meaning you can't get them on the phone. Like right now, I could be having a great product, for example, but let's say I purchase a product, I'm going to just say any name, anybody who's famous, right? They're not going to come to me on the phone if I call them with a question or anything. They'll send me through 500,000 hoops and ladders. I may get some weird support service and you never see them again. That's what I'm talking about, that it gets to a point where it's all about their money, their cents and things. You never hear from these
Yeah,
people.
but you didn't lose me there. I know what you're saying, but but I still think that anytime somebody's making an investment, and it doesn't matter if somebody buys a $5 product from me or a $5,000 product from me, that level of investment is still the same as far as I'm concerned because they invested in my name and they invest because we are like I don't care what your brand is called, you are still your brand. So it doesn't matter if it's a low ticket or a high ticket. There does need to be somebody that you can get in touch with. So if somebody bought a $5 product from me, right, and the name didn't really signify what the product was, and they wanted to get in touch with me and say, hey, I thought this was about gut health and it turns out this is a recipe card file, any way I can do an exchange. It doesn't matter that they paid $5 or it was a free giveaway. They're entitled to get what they believe they were getting. So on
Well,
that retrospect. But we're gonna let everybody go because I think that we have given them a lot of information today, and we want to let them step back and process a little of what we said.
I think that, in that case, I have a different viewpoint than you in certain things. But again, you're entitled to your point of view on that. I don't think um, that everything merits the same kind of handling. But I do get concerned when a person has invested thousands of dollars and then they cannot get anything back. It matters. It's not because a $5 investment is less important in importance, but because of the skin in the game that's invested on both ends should be respected, you know?
Yeah, but
Um,
that's all I'm trying to say. That it doesn't matter. Anytime anybody puts some skin in the game, whether it's 2,000, certainly $2,000 is more detrimental to them,
right.
and a greater
If that comes
hardship.
with the offer, if that comes with your offer,
So
then of
yeah,
course,
I
you
mean,
know.
there's definitely a greater hardship when you lose more, but any
Hmm.
loss should be acknowledged. And
I
because
agree. I agree that losses should be acknowledged. I
yeah,
agree.
because $5 in some countries is a fortune. So, and we are in a global state. So somebody might have bought a $5 product from me and they live in Bangladesh, which could be a lot of money. That could be their salary for the month. Um, so we need to realign our thinking to not just costs, but quality of service. So
Right. And whatever terms that is, that's what I'm saying. I think that a $5 product may come with a different term than a $2,000 product. For example, I would not offer in-person live coaching for a $5 product because it doesn't merit the time and the effort and everything that I have to put in it for the
absolutely
value of
not.
what I propose. Right. So that's why I'm saying that different products are going to come with different terms. A digital download product, once you have the product in your hand, you have the product in your hand, is very different than something that is takes, like, let's say 3, 4, 5 months of engagement, right? So that's gonna vary, but I still think that these high tickets, for me, the high tickets are a big deal, more than anything because of what it means. And it's not a disrespect to any of the other lower tier pricing, but other lower tier pricing come with different engagement um, amount as well. So we will differ on that, and I can see that, and that's fine. But I just want to make sure it's not misconstrued because there are things, for example, that I couldn't be able to give people hand holding, hand touching, all that. If I sell 50 of them, I don't have 50 hours in a day for a $5 product for me. So there are certain things that that's never going to happen,
Yeah,
you
but
know.
people should.
You know what I
I'm
mean?
not. Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that either. So I don't want that misconstrued. Um,
Right. That's why I want
I
to be
would.
clear.
Yeah, but
You know?
They do deserve their money back if they or an exchange. So,
Right. It depends. I guess that's a case by case basis, but again, we will differ on certain things here, and I can see that, and that's fine. I think that you will have your policies basing on what you do with the weight loss and the gut and all that. There are certain things that are not as black and white, and they
but
require other type of engagement.
policies need to be in place. So like
Absolutely.
my return policies are listed on my websites and any places that people
Yes.
buy it. So people know
Yes.
when they get it. If someone's buying a digital download
Right.
from me and it's a book, they're not getting anything back because
I get it, but that's what I'm saying. That different things are
so
going to
yeah,
merit different,
because it's already been
because you
delivered.
have it, like you
You
have it in your
already got it.
hands,
So,
like how am I
but
going to
yeah.
do that?
All right, guys. So we've taken a lot of your time tonight. We've talked about a lot of different things, and we always bring out the best in one another. So she brings ideas out in me, and I think I bring ideas out in her, and we just here trying to share our ideas. But in no way are we trying to tell you how to live your life or your business.
Oh
We're
no.
just two girls out here sharing our opinions. And we want to thank you
Do
for
you,
joining
boo?
us on for a reality check-in on Soul's Code. Have a good night.